Okay, in terms of roles that work well fractionally, here we're talking about some different C-level roles and also growth marketing. And well, first let me define what I really mean here. And in particular, up at the top, we've got growth marketing and CMO. What's the difference there? A growth marketer is someone who is doing a lot of the IC work, meaning they're doing the blocking and tackling. They're on Google Ads, they're on LinkedIn Ads, they're on Meta, all of those ad platforms. So whether it's search engine marketing or display marketing, retargeting, all of those kinds of things, SEO, all of the actual blocking and tackling, getting this stuff done, that's what's happening within the growth marketing role. And we've seen a lot of success with this, actually, based on company demand. What we're finding is that clients and firms that we talk to, which tend to be scaling startups, they either have a need to build product and grow their product faster, or they have a need to market it and get the word out to potential customers. And so the growth marketing piece, we find that it's one or the other, or it's both, and growth marketing has become a natural fit for us. And so we're seeing great results with that. I should add that in my own past experience, we used fractional growth marketing talent at my last startup at Hidden Levers, particularly in the SEM space, so to help run our Google Ads and optimize those. We didn't need a full-time person to focus on that, with the B2B company and the scale we were at. And so we did this in a fractional way, and it worked well. So I'm going to give that 3 check marks in that can be a great fit. On to the CMO role, the managing of that. So we find that with a lot of executive level or leadership level roles, if you already have an individual contributor in place doing a thing, then it becomes possible to bring in sometimes some executive leadership, really to help coach, to help bring in experience and guide, from a project and a planning perspective, what you should be doing, and maybe what you shouldn't be doing as well. And so from that perspective, the CMO role can work very well. But I'm still going to give this, relative to the IC role, I'm going to give that 2 check marks. I think it can work very well. Where does it fall down? Where it falls down is anytime the, company, when you're hiring fractionally, or if you're a client, if there's an expectation that the person does sales, then it doesn't work. And sometimes in our minds, as founders, as business owners, we're like, we want you to get the leads in, and then we want you to close. We want you to generate new business. The problem is that sales, it doesn't work. And I'm going to get into that in more detail. But as long as you keep that differentiation, then the CMO role can work as well. CFOs, there's actually a long history of fractional CFOs. Most startups don't need this as a full-time role. I've argued in the past you don't need one at all, and I actually kind of believe that's true. But to the extent maybe you do have a financially complex business, maybe you have working capital needs, maybe your margins are thin and you really got to watch it closely, well then that CFO role might be useful. Fractional CFO is a great way to do it because quite often you just don't need someone full-time to do that until you get much larger. And then the CTO role, I will give this, you may be surprised, but like, oh yeah, you would be all in on a fractional CTO, right? Well, I'm going to give it 2 check marks, if you can see those 2 check marks, not quite 3. So I do think it can be a good fit. It can work very well to help coach an engineering team. We have numerous instances. We've done a lot of this work at Fraction. And in fact, my last SaaS startup, we had a fractional engineer who became our CTO eventually. But perhaps actually the counter argument is within that story. When Dave, that fractional engineer, finally became CTO, he was full-time. Quite often, if your core is a software product, your CTO is owning that product or a lot of responsibility. And so they may be part of your core team in such a way that you might want them to be full-time. And so that could be a progression like we had from fractional to full-time. But it may just be the case that you have those expectations on day one. So as long as you've got clear boundaries on what the person's supposed to do, then I think that a fractional CTO, that role can work well. I differentiate that from some of the other C-level roles where if you're at a software company, until you pass a certain scale, you might not have full-time work for a CFO, even if you wanted to have them full-time. You just don't have it. Whereas if you're a software company, on day one, arguably you do have full-time work for a hands-on CTO. And so just making sure that you've got clearly defined responsibility. And if you can do that, then I think you can work really well. And the same goes on the marketing side. As long as you keep the responsibility clearly defined so that it doesn't bleed into sales, then I think this can work really well in terms of helping you generate leads, which then, becomes a responsibility of whoever's in biz dev or sales at your organization.